I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window as I prepared breakfast, just as I had done for the past 66 years of my life. My hands, weathered with age but still capable, moved deftly as I cracked eggs into a bowl. This morning routine had become more complicated since my daughter Lauren and her husband Matthew moved in 3 months ago, claiming their apartment needed renovations. "Mom, could you make Matthew's eggs over easy instead of scrambled?" Lauren called from the living room, not bothering to look up from her phone. "He doesn't like them scrambled," I nodded silently, adjusting my glasses. At 66, I had learned when to speak and when to simply comply. This was my house, the home I had paid for with decades of hard work. Yet somehow, I felt like a guest in it now. My name is Barbara Miller. I raised my daughter Lauren as a single mother after her father disappeared when I was just 18 years old. One night, he was there promising marriage. The next morning, gone like morning mist. His parents slammed their door in my face when I sought answers, telling me their son wouldn't ruin his future for some random girl. For 35 years, I cleaned other people's houses to provide for my daughter. My hands, once smooth and delicate, became calloused from scrubbing floors and bathrooms. But every blister was worth it when I saw Lauren grow into a beautiful, educated woman, something I never had the chance to become. "The coffee's too strong again, Mom," Matthew said, entering the kitchen in his expensive bathrobe. He poured the coffee I'd made down the sink without a second thought. "I've told you at least 3 times that I like it medium roast, not dark." My heart sank a little. "I'm sorry, Matthew. I'll remember next time." Matthew Wilson, my son-in-law of 7 years, worked as a marketing executive, tall, handsome, and always impeccably dressed. He had swept Lauren off her feet. I had been thrilled when they first met. Lauren seemed so happy, and Matthew had appeared charming and stable. I even spent my last savings to help pay for their wedding, wanting it to be perfect for my only child. I still remembered Lauren's words that day, tears in her eyes as I helped with her wedding dress. "Mom, I wouldn't be here without you. I promise now that I'm married and settled. You'll never have to struggle again." Those words seemed to belong to another lifetime now. The changes began subtly after they moved in. First, it was small comments about my outdated furniture. Then came the rearrangement of my kitchen cabinets without asking. Soon, Lauren was going through my mail, claiming she wanted to help organize my finances. "Mom, why do you need to withdraw $200 cash every month?" she had asked last week, waving my bank statement. "That seems excessive for someone who barely leaves the house." I hadn't told her that $50 of that money went to my blood pressure medication that insurance didn't fully cover, and the rest I was saving in a small tin in my closet, a habit from harder times when banks couldn't be trusted. As I served breakfast, I noticed Lauren and Matthew exchanging glances. They'd been doing that a lot lately, silent communications that stopped when I entered a room. "Barbara," Matthew said, using my first name despite knowing I preferred being called Mom or Mrs. Miller. "We need to talk about something important." Lauren nodded. "Mom, we're concerned about you living alone in this big house. You're getting older, and we've noticed you've been forgetting things." "Forgetting things," I repeated, genuinely confused. My mind was as sharp as it had always been. "Yesterday you left the stove on," Matthew added, his tone patronizing. I frowned, certain I hadn't. I was meticulous about kitchen safety after a childhood friend lost her home to a fire. "And last week, you missed your doctor's appointment," Lauren continued. "We're starting to think you might need more supervision." What they didn't know, what I couldn't tell them without starting an argument, was that I had canceled that appointment after Lauren had borrowed $300 from my purse. Money I had set aside specifically for the doctor visit and medication. These conversations had become more frequent, each time. A new example of my supposed forgetfulness or incompetence would be presented as evidence that I couldn't care for myself. Each time. The suggestion that I should consider alternative living arrangements grew stronger. Last month, strange visitors began arriving at my home. A man who introduced himself as Dr. Reeves came to check on my well-being at Lauren's request. He asked odd questions about my daily routine, whether I got confused about time, and if I ever saw things that weren't there. Another day, A woman claiming to be a senior care specialist measured doorways and bathrooms, mentioning how difficult it would be for a wheelchair to navigate my hallways. I hadn't mentioned needing a wheelchair. I walked a mile each morning when Lauren and Matthew were still asleep. One afternoon, I overheard Lauren on the phone in the backyard. Yes, we're already living with her. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Mom thinks it's temporary, but we're working on making it permanent. Yes, the house is fully paid off. When I asked who she was talking to, she quickly said it was a work colleague about a project deadline. That night, I lay awake in my bed, listening to Lauren and Matthew whispering in the guest room. Their voices were too low to make out the words, but their tone held a secretiveness that made my stomach knot with worry. I thought about my mother's words before she passed away when Lauren was 8. As she lay in her hospital bed, she had squeezed my hand and said, "Margaret, that child is your greatest treasure. Give her education. Give her love. She will take care of you when you're old. Our family's blood is good. She won't fail you." Those words had given me strength through the hardest times, when I worked 14-hour days cleaning houses, when I sold my mother's sewing machine to pay for Lauren's college application fees, when I took out a second mortgage on my house to fund her business degree. I had believed my mother's words with all my heart. Now, in the darkness of my bedroom, surrounded by whispers that stopped when floorboards creaked, I wondered if she had been wrong. The next morning, I found Lauren and her cousin Carol hurriedly gathering papers from the kitchen table when I entered. Carol worked at the county clerk's office and had always been close with Lauren despite our family's complicated history. "Hello, Aunt Barbara," Carol greeted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just helping Lauren with some of Matthew's health insurance paperwork." But I caught a glimpse of my name on one of the documents before Carol slid it into a folder. "Why do you need papers with my name on them?" I asked. Lauren and Carol exchanged a look I couldn't decipher. "It's just to update beneficiaries on our insurance, Mom," Lauren explained. "You know, in case something happens to us. You're our only family." The explanation seemed reasonable, but later I noticed that whenever I mentioned those papers, Lauren would quickly change the subject. That evening, a new doctor arrived, Dr. Fleming, who specialized in geriatric cognitive assessment. Lauren hadn't mentioned scheduling this appointment. "Mrs. Miller," he said kindly, "I'd just like to ask you a few questions to see how you're doing." The questions started simply. "What day is it? Who is the current president? Can you count backward from 100 by sevens?" Then they became more personal. "Do you ever feel confused about where you are? Do you have trouble recognizing family members? Have you noticed money missing from your accounts?" That last question made me pause. Yes, money had gone missing $300 from my purse just last week, but somehow I knew that wasn't what he was asking. After the doctor left, I heard him speaking quietly to Lauren and Matthew in the living room. "She shows some signs of mild age-related confusion. I'll note it in my report." I stood in the kitchen, perfectly lucid and aware, listening to this man write falsehoods about my mental state. Later that week, more papers appeared and disappeared from the kitchen table. More whispered conversations. More concerned looks. More comments about how I'd forgotten things I knew I hadn't forgotten. "Mom," Lauren said one evening as we washed dishes together, "Matthew and I have been thinking. This house is really too big for you to maintain. The stairs must be difficult for you." "I manage just fine," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I climbed those stairs multiple times daily without issue." "Well," she continued, not meeting my eyes, "we think it might be better if you considered moving to a smaller place. Something more appropriate for your needs." "My needs," I echoed. "You know, somewhere with people your own age. Where there's help if you need it." I set down the plate I was drying. "Lauren, are you suggesting I move to a retirement home?" "Not exactly," she said quickly. "Just a senior living community. You'd have your own little apartment, activities, friends your age." "This is my home," I said simply. "I've lived here for 30 years. I raised you here." Lauren sighed as if I were being difficult. "Just think about it, Mom. For us, that night, alone in my room, I took out an old photo album. Pictures of Lauren as a baby, as a toddler taking her first steps, as a kindergartner in the uniform I'd ironed so carefully. Pictures of her high school graduation, her college graduation events I had worked extra shifts to afford attending. I remembered walking to her kindergarten because we couldn't afford the bus fare, but making sure her shoes were perfectly polished. I remembered other mothers arriving in expensive cars, looking at my patched dress and calloused hands with pity or disdain. But when Lauren had kissed my cheek and said, "Thank you, Mom. You're the best in the world," I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Where had that loving daughter gone? When had she become this stranger who looked at me with impatience and spoke to me with barely concealed condescension? The next week brought more concerned visits from healthcare professionals I'd never met, more whispered conversations, more comments about my supposed forgetfulness, more suggestions about more appropriate living arrangements. I began to feel like a prisoner in my own home. Lauren had started helping with my finances, insisting I no longer needed to worry about paying bills or managing my bank account. Matthew had taken my car keys, claiming the check engine light needed addressing, but weeks had passed without the car being fixed. My world was shrinking by the day, controlled by the very people who should have been protecting me. It was a Tuesday afternoon that changed everything. Lauren and Matthew had left early, saying they needed to handle some work matters. I'd seen them whispering all morning, and when I asked what was happening, they responded with those fake smiles I'd learned to recognize. "It's nothing, Mom," Lauren had said. "Just boring stuff about Matthew's job." The house felt different when they were gone, lighter somehow, as if their absence lifted a weight I hadn't realized was pressing down on me. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in my favorite armchair by the window, enjoying the rare moment of peace. Around 3 o'clock, my phone chimed with a notification. It was a voice message from Lauren. I assumed she was letting me know they'd be late for dinner or asking me to prepare something special. I pressed play without any inkling that the next 3 minutes would shatter my world completely. "Matthew, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore." Lauren's voice began with an exasperation I'd never heard when she spoke to me directly. My heart stopped. Those words, spoken with such contempt, pierced my soul like daggers. "She's a total nuisance. Matthew, she gets into everything we do, always asking questions, always there, and on top of that, we're already spending so much money on her." My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. This was not the sweet daughter who would hug me and say, "I love you, Mom," before leaving for school. "I've been looking into some places. I found one on the outskirts that only costs $800 a month. With what we save, we can finally remodel the kitchen we want so badly and even get new furniture for the living room." Every word was a physical blow. My own daughter, the child to whom I had dedicated my entire life, was talking about me as if I were a piece of old furniture that needed to be discarded. The $800 the home would cost was exactly what I had been giving them every month for their supposed help with my finances money that came from my pension and small savings. "Also, I've already checked all the house papers. It's in her name. But Carol already explained how we can transfer it to our name without her realizing. It's going to be about $500 in bribes and fees, but it's worth it. My cousin already has experience with these kinds of arrangements." In that moment, I understood everything. Carol's casual visits with folders full of documents, the conversations that stopped when I appeared, the specialists who had come to evaluate my house and my mental state. It had all been part of a meticulously orchestrated plan to have me declared incompetent and steal my property. My house, the house I had built brick by brick, working 12 hours a day for 30 years. The house where I had raised Lauren, where we had celebrated her birthdays, where I had cried when she graduated from college. That house, worth approximately $485,000, represented all my assets, all my future, all my security. I already spoke with the director of the St. Francis home. Lauren's voice continued with a coldness that chilled me to the bone. I explained the situation. I told him that Mom has early-stage dementia and that it's dangerous for her to live alone. He was very understanding. He says they see cases like this all the time. I've already signed all the preliminary admission papers. My legs trembled so much I had to sit on the kitchen floor. My own daughter had lied to a stranger about my mental state. She had signed papers to have me institutionalized without my consent, and she was doing it with the same ease with which one plans a vacation. "The plan is perfect, honey," she went on, talking to Matthew. Next Tuesday, we're going to tell her she has a routine medical appointment. We'll take her to the home, check her in, and by the time she realizes what happened, she'll already be inside, and we'll have legal guardianship. Carol says that with the medical reports we got, which say she has mental confusion, it will be very easy to prove she can't make decisions on her own. Those fake medical reports they had fabricated with the help of corrupt doctors, those evaluations I had allowed, thinking they were for my health, it had all been a farce to build a file that would justify taking away my freedom and my rights. Matthew could be heard in the background laughing and adding comments I couldn't understand clearly, but his tone of approval was evident. The man I had welcomed into my family, whom I had helped financially, whom I had treated like a son, was actively participating in the plan to destroy my life. The best part of all, Lauren continued with a laugh that broke my heart, is that she'll never suspect a thing. She thinks we're the perfect children who adore her. She still says, "Thank you for taking care of me, honey," when I bring her breakfast in bed. In that moment, something inside me broke irreparably. It wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't just the pain of discovering that my daughter hated me. It was the humiliation of realizing that while I blessed her every night in my prayers, thanking God for giving me such a good daughter, she was calculating how many days were left until she could get rid of me. With the $485,000 the house is worth, we can pay off all our credit card debts, the car loan, and we'll even have enough left over to go to Europe on vacation like we've always wanted. Lauren continued. And the best part is we won't have to pretend to love her anymore. No more Sundays pretending we like her horrible food. No more listening to her repetitive stories from when she was young. Every word was another stab. My food, which I prepared with so much love every Sunday, hoping they would come to visit. My stories, which I told because I wanted to share the beautiful memories of my youth with them. Everything I thought was love and connection was for them a nuisance they had to endure. In a month, Mom will be in the home and we'll own everything, Lauren finished saying. We can finally live in peace without that bitter old woman controlling us. Besides, the life insurance she has is in our name, so if something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it wouldn't be so bad. Those last words froze my blood. Not only did they want to steal my house and my freedom, but they had coldly calculated that my death would also be convenient for them. They had turned their own mother into an investment, hoping to gain profits from both my life and my death. The message ended with laughter and comments about what restaurant to choose for dinner that night, as if they had just planned a vacation instead of the total destruction of the woman who had loved them more than anything in the world. I stayed seated on my kitchen floor for I don't know how long, with the phone still in my hand, replaying the message over and over, hoping I had heard wrong, hoping it was a nightmare I would wake up from. But every time I listened, the reality became more raw, more painful, more definitive. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything but walk around my house looking at every object, every photograph, every memory I had built, thinking that I had once planned to lovingly pass it all on to my daughter. Now, I knew that all of it was going to be stolen, sold, or thrown in the trash without any respect for the memories it represented. As I walked through my house in the darkness of that night, something began to change inside me. The sadness and pain started to transform into something I hadn't felt in a long time, pure, cold determination. My daughter thought I was a naive old woman who was easy to manipulate, but she had completely underestimated the woman who had raised her. As dawn broke, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, my mind racing through memories, searching for signs I might have missed. There had been so many, now that I knew what to look for. I remembered the first subtle change 3 years ago, when Matthew lost his job and they started having financial problems. The requests for money began innocently, $1,000 for monthly expenses, then $2,500 for a car down payment, then $3,000 to pay off credit card debts. I had given without hesitation, isn't that what mothers do? After that $3,000 loan, their behavior shifted. Sunday visits became less frequent, then stopped altogether. We're so busy with Matthew's new job, Lauren would explain. You know how it is. Phone calls shortened to 5 minutes, always with excuses. I'm in an important meeting. I'm at the grocery store. It's too late. We're having dinner. Then came the comments disguised as concern. Mom, Matthew says he's noticed you've been very forgetful lately. Are you sure you can live alone in that big house at your age? Anything could happen. I recalled the afternoon I surprised them with a visit, bringing Matthew's favorite pineapple dessert. They took 5 minutes to answer the door despite the laughter I heard inside. When I entered, Carol was there with documents scattered across the table, quickly stuffed into a folder when they saw me. I remembered the forgotten lunch dates, when I'd sit alone in restaurants while other families enjoyed meals together. I remembered learning from my neighbor, Mrs. Rose, about a barbecue celebration for Matthew's birthday to which I hadn't been invited. Oh, Mom, it was very informal. We didn't want to bother you. Lauren had explained when I asked. Each memory, once confusing or hurtful, now formed a clear pattern of deception leading to this moment. They had been planning this for months, perhaps years, carefully constructing a narrative of my mental decline while positioning themselves to take everything I owned. I opened my address book and flipped through the pages, stopping at the entry for Sarah Johnson, my friend of 40 years and a retired legal secretary. If anyone would know how to help me navigate this situation, it would be Sarah. But first I needed to secure the evidence. I transferred the voice message to my email, then downloaded it to a USB drive I kept for important documents. I made 3 copies, one to keep with me, one to mail to Sarah, and one to hide in the house. When Lauren and Matthew returned that evening, I greeted them with the same smile I always had, serving dinner as if nothing had changed. Inside, I was different, watching, calculating, planning. How was your day, Mom? Lauren asked, her tone artificially bright. Quiet, I replied, not mentioning the voice message that had destroyed my world. Just reading and gardening. You know, Mom, Matthew said, cutting into his chicken. Lauren and I were thinking, your birthday is coming up next month. How would you feel about a special doctor's appointment as a gift? There's this great specialist in geriatric health. I knew now what that special appointment really meant. Their plan to institutionalize me was already in motion. Next Tuesday, they had said in the message, 6 days away. That sounds wonderful, I lied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You two are always so thoughtful. They exchanged surprised glances, clearly having expected resistance. Actually, I added, I was thinking of visiting Sarah tomorrow. It's been a while since I've seen her. Sarah, Lauren frowned. Your friend from the church, Mom. Is that a good idea? You've been so tired lately. And how would you get there? Your car is still at the mechanic. I thought I'd take the bus, I said. The stop is just at the corner. Absolutely not, Matthew interjected. The bus is dangerous for someone your age. All those steps to climb. Strangers who might take advantage of you. I'll drive you, Lauren offered, though her tone made it clear she wasn't pleased. I have some errands to run tomorrow anyway. I knew she would never take me to Sarah's. She would find an excuse, claim I had forgotten the plan, or simply drive me somewhere else. But I nodded gratefully, playing my part in this new, terrible game. That night, after they went to bed, I crept to my closet and retrieved the emergency cash I'd been saving, $1.200 hidden in an old cookie tin. I packed a small bag with essentials, a change of clothes, toiletries, my medication, and most importantly, the USB drive with Lauren's message. At 4 a.m, before Lauren and Matthew woke, I left a note on the kitchen table. Gone to early church service, then coffee with the ladies. Back by noon. Love, Mom. I slipped out of my house, uncertain if I would ever return, and walked 3 blocks to catch the first bus of the morning. By sunrise, I was at Sarah's door. Barbara, she exclaimed, opening the door in her bathrobe. What on earth are you doing here so early? Is everything all right? Her concern turned to shock, then to rage as I played the voice message for her. Sarah, always fiercely protective of her friends, swore under her breath something I'd never heard her do in 40 years of friendship. Those despicable, ungrateful... She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. Barbara, this is serious. This is elder abuse and attempted fraud. We need to get you legal help immediately. Sarah's grandson, Michael, was a lawyer specializing in elder law. One phone call from Sarah, and he arrived at her house within the hour, legal pad in hand, expression grave as he listened to the recording. Mrs. Miller, Michael said when the message ended, what your daughter and son-in-law are planning is not just immoral, it's illegal. Attempted financial exploitation of an elder, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of medical documents. We need to act quickly to protect you and your assets. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and documents. Michael helped me open a new bank account that only I could access. He drafted a power of attorney naming Sarah as my representative, not Lauren. He arranged for a legitimate neurological evaluation to document my mental competence. What about the house? I asked. Can they really take it from me? Not legally, Michael assured me. But we need to be proactive. Carol's position at the county clerk's office is concerning. She could potentially process fraudulent paperwork. We'll file a notice with the county recorder today, flagging any attempts to transfer your property. By late afternoon, my phone had 17 missed calls from Lauren. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed to be fully protected first. You should stay here tonight, Sarah offered. It's not safe for you to go back until all the legal protections are in place. I agreed, calling Lauren to tell her I was staying at Sarah's overnight. We're having such a lovely time catching up, I said, keeping my voice light. I hope you don't mind. Mom, you can't just decide to stay overnight somewhere without discussing it with us first, Lauren replied, her voice sharp. What about your medication, your routines? I have my medication, I said, and Sarah is taking good care of me. Put Sarah on the phone, Lauren demanded. I want to make sure she understands your special needs. I handed the phone to Sarah, who delivered an Academy Award-worthy performance. Oh, Lauren, don't worry, your mother is doing just fine. We're having a wonderful girls' night face masks, old movies, ice cream. I'll make sure she takes all her medications. She winked at me as she spoke, her voice sugary sweet. After hanging up, Sarah's expression hardened. They'll be suspicious if you stay away too long. Michael says the legal protections should be in place by tomorrow afternoon. You should return home then, but not alone. The next morning, Michael arrived with additional documents for me to sign and a plan for my return home. I'll be accompanying you, he said. As your lawyer, I need to officially inform your daughter and son-in-law of the legal actions being taken. A legitimate doctor, a neurologist recommended by Michael, arrived to conduct a thorough cognitive assessment. After 2 hours of testing, his conclusion was unequivocal. Mrs. Miller shows no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. Her memory and decision-making abilities are well within normal range for her age, actually above average. Armed with this medical report, the legal documents Michael had prepared, and my recorded evidence, I felt ready to return home and confront the people who had betrayed me so completely. At dawn on Thursday, exactly 2 days after discovering the voice message that changed everything, I woke in Sarah's guest room with a clarity and determination I hadn't felt in years. I put on my most elegant crimson suit, the one I had worn to Lauren's college graduation, and carefully applied my makeup. I wanted to look like the strong, dignified woman I was, not the vulnerable victim they thought I was. Over breakfast, Michael reviewed our strategy once more. Remember, Mrs. Miller, the goal today is to secure your safety and your assets. We're not confronting them about everything yet, just establishing the legal boundaries that will protect you while we build the full case. Sarah squeezed my hand. Barbara, are you sure you want to go back to that house? You could stay here longer. I shook my head. I need to face them, and I need to be in my own home while we sort this out. This isn't just about the money or the house. It's about my dignity. At 9 o'clock, Michael drove me home. As we pulled into my driveway, I saw Lauren peeking through the curtains, her expression changing from relief to confusion when she spotted Michael's suit and briefcase. Before we could reach the front door, Lauren flung it open, rushing toward me with a performance of concern. Mom, we've been so worried. Why didn't you answer your phone? And who is this Lauren? I said calmly. This is Michael Johnson, my attorney. He's here to help me with some important legal matters. Her face paled. "Attorney, what legal matters, Mom? What's going on?" "Perhaps we should discuss this inside," Michael suggested professionally. "Is your husband home as well? It would be best if both of you were present for this conversation." Lauren's eyes darted between us, calculating. "He's on a work call. I'm not sure if it's important that he join us," Michael insisted. "This concerns both of you." Once inside, Lauren called Matthew, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. He appeared from the home office, his confident smile faltering when he saw Michael's briefcase and my composed demeanor. "Matthew Wilson," Michael introduced himself, extending his hand. "I'm Barbara Miller's attorney. I'm here to discuss some concerning legal matters that have come to our attention." Matthew's facade of charm instantly activated. "Legal matters. There must be some mistake. Barbara hasn't mentioned needing an attorney." "That's part of what we need to discuss," Michael replied, opening his briefcase on my kitchen table, the same table where Lauren and Carol had spread their fraudulent documents. From his briefcase, Michael produced a stack of papers. "First, I've been instructed to inform you that Mrs. Miller has undergone a comprehensive neurological evaluation by Dr. James Richardson at Memorial Hospital. His assessment, which I have here, conclusively states that she shows no signs of cognitive impairment or dementia and is fully capable of managing her own affairs." Lauren's face flushed. "We never said she had dementia. We've just been concerned about some recent forgetfulness, which is normal at her age." Michael nodded, his expression neutral. "I understand. However, it's come to our attention that several unauthorized medical evaluations have been conducted in this home by practitioners who have not been selected by Mrs. Miller as her physicians of record. Additionally, there have been discussions with care facilities regarding Mrs. Miller's placement, without her knowledge or consent." Matthew stepped forward, his charm hardening into intimidation. "Who told you these things? This is a family matter, and with all due respect, you're overstepping." "On the contrary," Michael countered, "elder protection is very much a legal matter. Now I have several documents for you both to review and sign." He laid 3 documents on the table. "This first document acknowledges that Barbara Miller is of sound mind and body, capable of making her own decisions, and that any medical, financial, or residential decisions must be approved by her directly." Lauren's hands trembled as she glanced at the paper. "This isn't necessary. We're her family. We only want what's best for her." "The second document," Michael continued as if she hadn't spoken, "is notification that Mrs. Miller has appointed Sarah Johnson as her power of attorney for healthcare and financial matters. Should she become incapacitated in the future." Lauren's voice rose. "But I'm her daughter. I should be the one making those decisions if something happens." I spoke then, my voice quiet but firm. "Lauren, I've made my choice." Michael placed the third document on the table. "This final document is a formal notice that any attempt to transfer ownership of this property, access Mrs. Miller's financial accounts without her express written consent, or remove her from her home against her will result in immediate legal action." Matthew's charming facade completely dissolved. "This is ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong, Barbara. What has gotten into you after everything we've done for you?" I think," I interrupted, meeting his gaze steadily, "it's time for us to be honest about who has done what for whom." Lauren began to cry those manipulative tears I had seen so many times when she wanted something as a child. "Mom, why are you doing this? We love you. We're just trying to take care of you." I almost faltered then, seeing my daughter's tears, but the memory of her voice in that message cold, calculating, laughing about my potential death strengthened my resolve. "These documents require your signatures acknowledging receipt," Michael explained. "Signing does not indicate agreement, only that you've been informed of Mrs. Miller's wishes and the legal protections now in place." Reluctantly, glaring at both of us, Lauren and Matthew signed the papers. "One more thing," Michael added, producing a final document. "This is a formal request for you to vacate this property within 30 days. "What?" Lauren gasped. "You're evicting us, your own daughter." "The arrangement was temporary," I reminded her, my heart breaking despite my determination. "You said your apartment renovations would be complete by now. We can't just leave in 30 days. Where will we go?" Matthew demanded. "I imagine back to your apartment. which I suspect never needed renovations in the first place, I replied quietly. Lauren's tears stopped abruptly, her expression hardening into something ugly and unfamiliar. You'll regret this. Mom, you have no idea what you're doing. On the contrary, I said, standing straighter in my crimson suit. For the first time in months, I know exactly what I'm doing. After Michael left with the signed documents, promising to return the next day to check on me, an icy silence fell over the house. Lauren and Matthew retreated to the guest room, whispering furiously behind the closed door. I sat in my kitchen, my heart pounding but my mind clear. This was just the beginning. I had secured my immediate safety and prevented them from taking my home or sending me to a care facility against my will. But the greater confrontation about the voice message, about their months of deception, was still to come. I thought of the voice message safely stored on the USB drive in my purse. I hadn't played it for them yet. That revelation, that final piece of evidence that would shatter any pretense of misunderstanding, would come when the time was right. For now, I had reclaimed control of my life. My daughter had severely underestimated the woman who had raised her, the woman who had cleaned houses for 30 years to provide her with opportunities, who had sacrificed everything for her success. I was Barbara Miller. I was 66 years old, and I was nobody's victim. I'll continue this story in part 2. But first, let me know what you think about this beginning. What would you do if you were in Barbara's place? Have you ever discovered someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? Comment below. The morning after Michael's visit, the atmosphere in my house was suffocating. Lauren and Matthew moved around like ghosts, speaking to each other in hushed tones that fell silent whenever I entered a room. They hadn't expected me to fight back. They certainly hadn't expected me to have legal protection. While they were still processing this unexpected turn of events, I knew I needed to act quickly. The third member of their conspiracy, Carol Rodriguez, Lauren's cousin who worked at the county clerk's office, remained a threat. As long as she had access to property records and was willing to manipulate them, my home wasn't truly secure. I waited until Lauren and Matthew left for what they claimed was a grocery run. The moment their car pulled away, I called for a taxi. 20 minutes later, I stood outside the county administration building, straightening my blouse and steadying my nerves. The county clerk's office was on the second floor, a large open space with a dozen desks arranged in rows. I spotted Carol immediately, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun as she typed at her computer, unaware of my presence. "Hello, Carol," I said, approaching her desk with a warm smile. She looked up, her fingers freezing over her keyboard. The color drained from her face as recognition set in. "Aunt Barbara? What are you doing here?" "I thought we might have a little chat," I replied, keeping my voice light. "In private, if possible." Carol's eyes darted around the office. Several colleagues had looked up, curious about the older woman who had made their coworker suddenly pale. I'm really busy right now. Maybe we could talk later. I could come by the house this weekend." "This won't take long," I insisted gently. "Is there somewhere we could speak privately just for a few minutes?" Reluctantly, Carol led me to a small conference room and closed the door behind us. Her hands trembled slightly as she motioned for me to sit. "Is everything okay? Lauren didn't mention you'd be stopping by." "Lauren doesn't know I'm here," I said, my pleasant smile never wavering. I reached into my purse and placed my phone on the table between us. "I wanted to talk to you about some documents you've been helping Lauren prepare." Carol's expression flickered between confusion and alarm. "Documents I don't—" I pressed play on my phone. Lauren's voice filled the small room. "I've already checked all the house papers. It's in her name." But Carol already explained how we can transfer it to our name without her realizing. "It's going to be about $500 in bribes and fees. But it's worth it." My cousin already has experience with these kinds of arrangements. Carol's face crumpled as the recording continued. By the time it ended, she had sunk deeper into her chair. Her confident posture completely dissolved. "Aunt Barbara," she whispered. "I can explain." "I'm listening," I said, folding my hands on the table. "Lauren told me you were getting confused, that you needed help managing your affairs. She said you'd agreed to transfer the house to them since they were taking care of you now." Carol's voice cracked. She said it was what you wanted, but you kept forgetting you'd agreed to it. And you believed that? I asked quietly. Carol looked down at her hands. I didn't question it at first. Lauren's always been so persuasive. And then when she offered me $2,000 to help with the paperwork, the confession hung in the air between us. I felt a strange calm despite the betrayal another person I had trusted, another family member willing to participate in my destruction for a price. What exactly were you planning to do, Carol? She hesitated, then let out a long breath. There's a way to process title transfers without the usual verification when it's between family members. I was going to backdate some documents, make it look like you had agreed to the transfer months ago, with the medical reports they got saying you had memory issues. It would be hard for you to contest it. These medical reports, I pressed. You've seen them, Carol nodded miserably. Lauren showed me evaluations from 3 different doctors, all saying you showed signs of cognitive decline. That's why I believed her. It seemed legitimate. I leaned forward. Carol, those reports were fraudulent. I've just had a comprehensive evaluation by a neurologist who confirms I have no cognitive impairment whatsoever. Oh, God, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they were fake. Let me be very clear, I said, my voice steady despite the anger burning inside me. What you were planning to do is illegal. It's fraud, and it could cost you your job, possibly even result in criminal charges. Carol began to cry openly now. Please, Aunt Barbara, I have 3 kids. I can't lose my job. I can't go to jail. I don't want to ruin your life, Carol, I said truthfully. But I need to protect mine. Her tears stopped abruptly as she sensed a potential way out. What do you want me to do? First, I want every document you've prepared or discussed with Lauren and Matthew, every form, every application, every piece of paper with my name on it. Carol nodded quickly. I can get those for you. Some are still drafts on my computer. Second, I want a signed statement detailing exactly what Lauren and Matthew asked you to do when they approached you, and what they promised in return. A statement, Carol's eyes widened. Lauren would never forgive me. And third, I continued as if she hadn't spoken, I want you to flag my property records with a special note that no changes can be made without in-person verification by me and my attorney. Carol wiped her tears, calculating her options. If I do all this, you won't report me to my supervisor. You won't press charges. If you help me now, completely and honestly, then no, I won't take legal action against you. I met her eyes directly. But Carol, if I discover you've warned Lauren or continued to help them in any way, the consequences will be severe. She nodded solemnly. I understand. I'll help you. Aunt Barbara, I'm so sorry. I never thought what? I asked when she trailed off. That I would find out, that I would fight back. Both, I guess, she admitted quietly. Lauren made it sound like you were already too confused to understand what was happening. And she's always been so determined. When she sets her mind to something, she usually gets her way. Not this time, I said firmly. For the next hour, Carol showed me everything: draft transfer documents, backdated consent forms, even a falsified power of attorney that would have given Lauren complete control over my finances. She printed copies of everything, then deleted the files from her computer while I watched. She wrote out a detailed statement, describing how Lauren had first approached hers 3 months ago, claiming I was experiencing dementia and needed protection from my own deteriorating judgment. She documented the $500 payment she'd already received and the promise of $1,500 more upon completion of the transfer. As she signed the statement, Carol looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What happens now? Now you find another job, I said simply, one where you won't be tempted to abuse your position to help family members commit fraud. Carol nodded, accepting this as fair. I never meant to hurt you, Aunt Barbara. I really believed Lauren was trying to help you. That's the thing about manipulation. Carol, the most effective kind makes everyone believe the manipulator has good intentions. I gathered the documents and stood to leave. I wish your children well. I hope they grow up with a stronger moral compass than their mother has shown. As I walked out of the county building, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and strength. Another family relationship destroyed. Another trusted person revealed as dishonest, but also another layer of protection secured around my home and my future. I called Michael from the taxi, updating him on what I'd learned and the documents I'd obtained from Carol. "This is excellent evidence, Mrs. Miller," he said approvingly. "Carol's statement directly implicates Lauren and Matthew in a conspiracy to commit fraud. It strengthens our case substantially." "What exactly is our case?" I asked. "What are we building toward?" There was a pause on the line. "That depends on what you want the outcome to be, Mrs. Miller. We could pursue criminal charges for elder abuse and attempted fraud, or we could focus on civil remedies, financial compensation for emotional distress, a restraining order to keep them away from you." I stared out the taxi window at the passing neighborhoods, families going about their lives, unaware of the betrayals and heartbreaks happening behind closed doors. "I need to think about it. Part of me wants justice, wants them to face consequences for what they plan to do to me. But another part, she's still your daughter," Michael finished gently. "I understand. You don't need to decide everything today. For now, we've secured your home and your finances. You're safe." Safe. The word echoed in my mind as the taxi pulled into my driveway. Was I truly safe in a house I shared with people who had plotted my destruction? Lauren's car was back in the driveway. They had returned from their grocery run, though I noticed they hadn't brought in any bags. As I paid the taxi driver, I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. Matthew opened the door before I could even reach for my key. His expression was a carefully constructed mask of concern. "Barbara, where have you been? Lauren's been worried sick. You can't just disappear without telling anyone, especially in your condition." "My condition," I echoed, stepping past him into my own home. "And what condition would that be?" "Matthew," he hesitated, thrown by my direct question. "Well, your memory issues. The confusion." Lauren appeared from the kitchen, her face a perfect portrait of daughterly worry. "Mom, thank God you're okay. We were about to call the police." "Where did you go?" I set my purse down on the entry table, taking my time to remove my gloves. "I had some business to attend to at the county clerk's office. I had a very interesting conversation with Carol." The silence that followed was deafening. Lauren and Matthew exchanged a panicked glance that confirmed everything. "What did Carol say?" Lauren finally asked, her voice unnaturally high. "Perhaps we should all sit down," I suggested, moving toward the living room. "We have a lot to discuss." The next morning, I woke to the sound of hushed, urgent conversation from the guest bedroom. Lauren and Matthew were clearly in crisis mode, trying to formulate a new strategy now that their original plan had been discovered and thwarted. I dressed carefully, choosing a blue blouse that had always given me confidence. Today would be another important day in reclaiming my life and my dignity. Michael was coming at 10 to discuss our next steps, and I wanted to be fully prepared. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Lauren rushed to answer it before I could reach the door, plastering on her most charming smile as she greeted Michael. "Mr. Johnson, so nice to see you again," she said warmly, as if yesterday's confrontation had never happened. "Mom's in the kitchen having her tea. Can I get you some coffee?" Michael declined politely, maintaining professional distance as he followed her to the kitchen where I waited. Matthew was notably absent, probably hiding in the guest room, avoiding the legal discussion to come. "Mrs. Miller," Michael said, shaking my hand formally despite Lauren's watchful gaze. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better, thank you," I replied truthfully. "Clearer than I have in months." Lauren hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable with being excluded from our conversation, but unwilling to leave us alone. Michael opened his briefcase on the kitchen table, spreading out several documents. "I've prepared the additional protections we discussed yesterday," he explained, keeping his voice professional. "First, a formal cease and desist letter regarding any discussions of Mrs. Miller's health, living arrangements, or finances with third parties without her express written consent." Lauren's face flushed. "This is ridiculous. I'm her daughter. Of course I'm going to discuss her health with doctors if I'm concerned." Michael continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Second, I filed a formal complaint with the medical board regarding the evaluations conducted without proper consent or appropriate medical protocols. The doctors involved will be required to explain their actions." "What doctors?" Lauren interjected, her voice rising. "Mom agreed to all those checkups." I turned to look at my daughter directly. "Lauren, I agreed to routine health checkups. I did not agree to cognitive evaluations or competency assessments. Those were arranged without my knowledge or consent." "You're confused," Lauren insisted, her eyes darting between Michael and me. "You absolutely agreed to those appointments." "You're just forgetting." "Mrs. Wilson," Michael said firmly. "Continuing to make false statements about your mother's mental capacity after she has been professionally evaluated and found competent could be considered defamation. I strongly advise against it." Lauren's mouth snapped shut, her eyes narrowing with barely contained fury. "Finally," Michael continued, "I've prepared a formal amendment to Mrs. Miller's living will and advance directives, explicitly removing you and your husband as potential healthcare proxies or financial decision-makers." This was too much for Lauren. "You can't do this," she exploded. "I'm her only child. Who else would make decisions for her if something happens? Mrs. Miller has appointed Sarah Johnson as her healthcare proxy and financial power of attorney," Michael explained calmly. "The documents have already been filed and recorded." "Sarah," Lauren spat the name. "That busybody old woman who's always interfering. She barely knows Mom." I set down my teacup with a deliberate clink. "Sarah has been my friend for 40 years. Lauren, she was there when you were born. She helped me raise money for your college application fees when I couldn't afford them. She knows me better than anyone." Lauren's eyes filled with tears, whether genuine or tactical. I couldn't tell anymore. "Mom, please. We're your family. We just want what's best for you. Is that why you were planning to put me in a home without my consent?" I asked quietly. "Is that why you were working with Carol to steal my house?" Her eyes widened in genuine shock. "What are you talking about? We never—" I reached into my purse and took out my phone. "Should I play the voice message again?" "Lauren, the one you accidentally sent to me instead of Matthew, the one where you discuss putting me in St. Francis home and transferring my house to your name." All color drained from Lauren's face. You heard that every word," I confirmed, "including the part where you said you wouldn't be sorry if something happened to me at the home because you'd get my life insurance." Lauren collapsed into a kitchen chair, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. "Mom, I didn't mean— It was just talk. We were frustrated. You have to understand—" "Mrs. Wilson," Michael interrupted, "I strongly advise you not to make any further statements at this time. Anything you say could potentially be used in future legal proceedings." "Legal proceedings," Lauren whispered, her voice breaking. "You're suing us, your own family." I looked at my daughter, this stranger who had planned my institutionalization with such cold calculation, and felt a profound sadness wash over me. "I haven't decided yet what legal actions I'll pursue. That depends largely on what happens next." Matthew finally appeared in the kitchen doorway, having evidently been listening from the hallway. "What do you want from us?" he asked bluntly. "Money, is that it, because we don't have any? That's why we needed—" He stopped abruptly, realizing what he'd been about to admit. "Needed my house," I finished for him. "Needed my life insurance payout." Michael cleared his throat. "At this point, Mrs. Miller is simply ensuring her legal protections are in place. Any decisions about further action will come later. You have 30 days to vacate this property," I reminded them. "Though given what I've learned, I'm considering amending that to 14 days. We can't find a place that quickly," Lauren protested. "Rents are insane right now, and we'd need first and last month's deposit. Plus, that's not my concern," I interrupted. "You have a place. The apartment you claimed needed renovations." Matthew and Lauren exchanged a guilty glance that confirmed my suspicion there had never been any renovations. The entire move into my home had been the first step in their plan to take everything from me. "Mrs. Miller," Michael said, turning to me, "there's one more matter we should discuss. The legitimate medical evaluation you underwent yesterday documented some concerning health issues that should be addressed." I nodded, though the neurologist had confirmed my cognitive abilities were intact. He had found my blood pressure dangerously high and noted signs of malnutrition. I'm aware. I've already scheduled follow-up appointments. Mom, what health issues? Lauren asked, suddenly all concern again. You didn't tell us you were sick. My blood pressure medication has been inconsistent lately, I said carefully. And I've lost weight. What I didn't say, what Michael and I had already discussed privately, was that my health had deteriorated significantly since Lauren and Matthew moved in. My medication had disappeared several times, forcing me to ration what remained. Meals had become irregular as they complained about my cooking and often left me to fend for myself while they ate out. We need to document these health changes, Michael said meaningfully. As part of our broader evidence gathering, Lauren seemed to understand the implication. You're not suggesting that we deliberately... She couldn't even finish the thought. I'm not suggesting anything, Mrs. Wilson, Michael replied coolly. I'm simply noting that there will be a complete record of Mrs. Miller's health status before and during your stay in her home. The rest of the meeting passed in tense silence as I signed the documents Michael had prepared. With each signature, I felt another piece of control returning to me, another safeguard against the people who had tried to take everything from me. As Michael prepared to leave, he handed me a business card. This is Dr. Elaine Winters, a therapist who specializes in elder abuse recovery. I strongly recommend you consider speaking with her. Lauren flinched at the words elder abuse, as if hearing them for the first time applied to her own actions. Thank you, Michael, I said, accepting the card. I'll call her today. After he left, the house fell into a heavy silence. Lauren retreated to the guest room, closing the door firmly behind her. Matthew lingered in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of my expensive scotch, a gift from a family I had cleaned for years, who had treated me with more respect than my own daughter now did. You know, Matthew said, swirling the amber liquid. Lauren really does love you. This wasn't her idea. I looked at him steadily. Whose idea was it? Then, he took a long sip before answering. We're drowning in debt. Barbara. Credit cards, car loans, the second mortgage on our condo that you don't know about. When Lauren mentioned your house was paid off, I saw a way out. So you decided to declare me incompetent and steal my home? I asked, my voice remarkably calm despite the rage bubbling beneath the surface. Matthew shrugged, the gesture so casual it stole my breath. It sounds terrible when you put it that way. We were going to make sure you were comfortable. St. Francis is a nice place, not like some state-run facility. And the life insurance was making sure I was comfortable, also why you hoped I might die soon after being institutionalized. He had the decency to look ashamed at that. That was just talk, heat of the moment. We were stressed about money. Get out of my kitchen, Matthew, I said quietly, and don't touch my scotch again. He set down the glass with a deliberate slowness, a small act of defiance. You've turned Lauren against me now, made her feel like a monster. We're family. Barbara. Families forgive. Some things are unforgivable, I replied. Planning to rob me of my home, my freedom, and hoping for my death, that crosses the line. Matthew's expression hardened. You haven't heard the last of this. Lauren might be wavering because of guilt, but I'm not so easily swayed. That house equity could solve all our problems, and one way or another, we're going to access it. The threat hung in the air between us. Instead of frightening me, it strengthened my resolve. I stood up straight, meeting his gaze directly. That sounds remarkably like another threat against me. Matthew, one I'll be sure to report to Michael immediately. Now get out of my kitchen before I call the police and have you removed from my property entirely. He left without another word, but the malice in his eyes told me this battle was far from over. The next morning, my doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Through the peephole, I saw Michael standing on my porch, accompanied by 2 police officers and a woman in a business suit whom I didn't recognize. Lauren had just emerged from the guest room in her bathrobe, looking exhausted after what had clearly been a sleepless night. Matthew was in the shower. I could hear the water running. Mom, Lauren called, seeing me at the door. Who's there? It's Michael, I replied. And some other people. Her face paled. Don't answer it. Let me get Matthew. This is my house. Lauren, I said firmly. I'll decide who enters it. I opened the door before she could protest further. Good morning, Mrs. Miller. Michael greeted me professionally. These officers are here at my request, given the nature of what we need to discuss today. And this is Regina Torres from Adult Protective Services. I shook Mrs. Torres's hand, noting her kind but serious expression. Please, all of you, come in. Lauren had disappeared down the hallway, presumably to warn Matthew. I led our visitors to the living room, offering them seats and coffee, which they politely declined. Mrs. Miller, Ms. Torres began. Based on the information provided by your attorney and the medical documentation from Dr. Richardson, we're conducting an investigation into possible elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I nodded, strangely calm despite the gravity of her words. I understand. Is your daughter home? One of the officers asked. We'd like to speak with her and her husband as well. They're here, I confirmed. Lauren went to get Matthew. He was in the shower. As if on cue, Lauren and Matthew appeared in the living room doorway. Matthew was hastily dressed, his hair still damp, while Lauren had thrown on jeans and a sweater, her face bare of the makeup she usually wore meticulously. What's going on? Matthew demanded, his eyes darting between the officers. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, the male officer said, standing. We're here to inform you that an official investigation has been opened regarding allegations of elder abuse and attempted financial exploitation of Barbara Miller. Lauren gasped. Elder abuse. That's insane. We love Mom. We've been taking care of her. Ms. Torres opened her briefcase, removing a folder. Mrs. Wilson, we have substantial evidence suggesting otherwise, including a recorded conversation in which you discuss institutionalizing your mother against her will and fraudulently transferring her property into your name. A private conversation between husband and wife, Matthew interjected. Taken completely out of context, Michael cleared his throat. There is no privacy exception for planning criminal activity. Mr. Wilson, the female officer stepped forward. We also have a sworn statement from Carol Rodriguez detailing her role in the planned fraud and confirming your involvement. Lauren collapsed onto the couch, her face in her hands. Carol confessed I don't believe it. She provided quite detailed information, Michael confirmed, including the $500 payment she received and the promise of $1,500 more upon completion of the property transfer. Matthew's composure cracked. This is a setup. Barbara is manipulating all of you. She's been increasingly paranoid, imagining conspiracies. Mr. Wilson, Miss Torres interrupted firmly. Dr. Richardson's evaluation conclusively rules out any cognitive impairment or paranoia. Mrs. Miller is of sound mind. Continuing to make false claims about her mental state could be considered defamation and additional emotional abuse. I sat quietly through this exchange, watching as Lauren and Matthew's carefully constructed narrative unraveled thread by thread. Part of me felt vindicated seeing them confronted with the truth. Another part ached at the sight of my daughter's distress, even knowing she had brought it upon herself. Mrs. Miller, Ms. Torres said, turning to me. Would you be willing to play the voice message for us now? It would help complete our understanding of the situation. I hesitated, glancing at Lauren. Her eyes pleaded with me silently, though whether she was begging me not to play it or for forgiveness, I couldn't tell. Yes, I said finally. I think it's important that everyone hears exactly what was planned. I took out my phone and pressed play. Lauren's voice filled the room, clear and cold. Matthew, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore. She's a total nuisance. As the message played, Lauren seemed to physically shrink into the couch. Matthew's face hardened into a mask of defiance. The officers and Ms. Torres listened with professional detachment, though I caught a flicker of disgust in the female officer's eyes when the recording reached the part about my life insurance. When it ended, the silence in the room was oppressive. Mrs. Wilson, the male officer said finally, would you care to explain this recording? Lauren raised her tear-streaked face. I was frustrated, overwhelmed. Taking care of an aging parent is hard, and we were under financial pressure. I said terrible things I didn't mean. And the plans to transfer the house, Ms. Torres pressed. The arrangements with St. Francis Home, the fraudulent medical reports, were those all things you didn't mean as well? Lauren looked at me directly for the first time. Mom, please, you have to understand. We were desperate. Matthew lost his job last year and has only been working part-time since we're behind on our mortgage. The credit card debt is crushing us. When we started talking about the house. So it was about money, I said quietly. All of this, the concern about my health. Moving in to help me, it was all about getting my house. Not at first, Lauren insisted. At first, we really were worried about you living alone. But then, things got complicated. Matthew stepped forward. I'm not going to grovel and lie like Lauren. Yes, we needed money. Yes, we saw an opportunity. But let's not pretend Barbara is some innocent victim here. She's been manipulating Lauren for years with guilt trips and emotional blackmail. The accusation was so unexpected it momentarily took my breath away. Emotional blackmail? When have I ever, after everything I've sacrificed for you? Matthew mimicked in a high voice. I cleaned houses for 30 years so you could go to college. You've been holding your sacrifices over her head her entire life, making her feel perpetually indebted to you. That's not true, I whispered, though a seed of doubt planted itself in my mind. Had I unintentionally made Lauren feel burdened by my sacrifices? Enough, Michael interjected firmly. This attempt to shift blame and gaslight Mrs. Miller is precisely the pattern of emotional abuse we're documenting. Ms. Torres nodded in agreement. Based on what I've seen and heard today, I'll be recommending immediate intervention. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, you will be required to vacate this property within 72 hours, not the 30 days previously stipulated. 72 hours, Lauren exclaimed. That's impossible. Where are we supposed to go? That's not Mrs. Miller's concern. Ms. Torres replied firmly. Additionally, a temporary restraining order will be issued prohibiting you from contacting Mrs. Miller directly while this investigation proceeds. Matthew's face darkened with rage. This is outrageous. We have rights. You can't just throw us out on the street based on an out-of-context recording and the word of a confused old woman. The male officer stepped closer to Matthew. Sir, I strongly advise you to moderate your tone and your words. Making threatening or derogatory comments will only worsen your situation. Lauren stood suddenly. I need some air, she said, her voice breaking. She rushed from the room, the front door slamming moments later. Matthew looked at me with cold hatred. You've destroyed your relationship with your only child. I hope it was worth it. No, Matthew, I replied sadly. Lauren destroyed our relationship when she decided my house was worth more than my freedom and dignity. After they left Matthew to follow Lauren, the officers to begin processing the restraining order, I sat alone with Michael and Miss C. Torres. What happens now? I asked, feeling suddenly exhausted. We'll ensure they leave within the 72-hour period, Ms. Torres explained. The restraining order will keep them from contacting you directly. As for criminal charges, that will depend partly on how much you want to pursue this. I closed my eyes briefly. I don't know yet. I need time to think. Michael patted my hand gently. You don't have to decide anything today. Mrs. Miller, for now, let's focus on getting them out of your house and ensuring your immediate safety. As they prepared to leave, I had one more question. What did Matthew mean about my emotional blackmail? Was I wrong to tell Lauren about the sacrifices I made for her? Ms. Torres smiled sadly. Mrs. Miller, there's a vast difference between a parent naturally mentioning their sacrifices and using those sacrifices as a weapon to control their child. Nothing in our investigation suggests you did the latter. This is a classic manipulation tactic, making the victim question whether they somehow deserved or invited the abuse. Her words reassured me somewhat, though Matthew's accusation still echoed uncomfortably in my mind. Had I unintentionally burdened Lauren with guilt? Was there some small kernel of truth in his claims as I closed the door behind them? The house felt simultaneously emptier and lighter. In 3 days, Lauren and Matthew would be gone. The immediate threat to my home and freedom would be removed, but the deeper wound, the betrayal by my only child, would take much longer to heal, if it ever could. The morning after Lauren and Matthew were ordered to leave my home, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. 12 missed calls, 37 text messages, and countless social media notifications. For a moment, I was confused. I rarely received more than a call or two each day, usually from Sarah or my church friends. When I checked the messages, my blood ran cold. "Barbara, are you okay? I just saw Lauren's post about your health issues. Is it true you're having memory problems? Lauren sounds so concerned. Mrs. Miller, we're praying for you. Dementia is such a terrible disease." With trembling fingers, I opened Facebook, an app I rarely used except to see photos of friends' grandchildren. There, at the top of my feed, was a public post from Lauren that had already been shared over 50 times. "Heartbroken today. My mother is suffering from advancing dementia and has become paranoid, accusing me and my husband of terrible things. She's kicked us out of her home where we were trying to care for her. Please pray for her and for us as we navigate this painful journey. If you see her around town, please be kind and patient. She may seem confused or make strange accusations." The post included a photo of me from Christmas 2 years ago, carefully selected to make me look frail and confused. The comments section overflowed with sympathy for Lauren and concern for my supposed mental decline. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, trying to process this new betrayal. Lauren had been ordered to have no direct contact with me, so she had found an indirect way to attack me instead, undermining my credibility with our entire community. My doorbell rang, startling me from my shock. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Rose, my neighbor of 20 years, holding a casserole dish and wearing an expression of pitying concern. I opened the door, forcing a smile. "Good morning, Rose." "Oh, Barbara," she said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "I brought you some chicken noodle casserole. I read about your condition. I wanted you to know we're all here for you." "My condition," I repeated carefully. "The dementia, dear. Lauren's post explained everything. You poor thing. No wonder you've been acting differently lately. Now it all makes sense." My heart sank as I realized how effectively Lauren had crafted her narrative. By explaining my supposed condition to the community first, she had positioned herself as the concerned daughter and me as the confused elder whose words couldn't be trusted. "Rose," I said gently, "I don't have dementia. I've been professionally evaluated by a neurologist who confirmed I have no cognitive impairment whatsoever." Rose's expression shifted to uncomfortable disbelief. "Oh, well, that's wonderful news, but Lauren seemed so certain." "Lauren is attempting to discredit me because I discovered she and Matthew were planning to have me declared incompetent and steal my house," I stated bluntly. Rose's eyes widened in shock. "Barbara, what a terrible thing to say about your own daughter." In that moment, I understood exactly how Lauren's strategy would work. Anyone who heard my side of the story would react just as Rose had, with disbelief that a daughter could do such a thing to her mother. The accusation sounded outlandish, paranoid, exactly what someone with dementia might claim. "I have proof," I said, reaching for my phone. A voice message Lauren accidentally sent me, detailing their entire plan. Rose backed away slightly. That's private. Barbara, I wouldn't want to intrude on family matters." "Of course," I replied, suddenly tired. "Thank you for the casserole, Rose. It was very thoughtful." After she left, I called Michael immediately. "They're trying to discredit me," I explained, my voice shaking with anger. "Lauren's posted all over social media claiming I have dementia and am making false accusations because of paranoia." Michael sighed heavily. "I was afraid they might try something like this. Social media can be a powerful weapon when wielded maliciously. But Mrs. Miller, remember we have actual evidence. Their claims are just words. Evidence that no one will believe if everyone thinks I'm suffering from dementia," I pointed out. "My neighbor just came over with a pity casserole, and when I tried to tell her the truth, she looked at me like I was confirming my insanity." "We need to fight back strategically," Michael said after a moment's thought. "Not with emotional rebuttals that could seem defensive, but with facts and professional opinions." By that afternoon, we had implemented our counter-strategy. Dr. Richardson, the neurologist who had evaluated me, issued a formal statement with my permission confirming that I showed no signs of cognitive impairment and had scored above average on all cognitive assessments for my age group. Sarah posted a fierce defense of me on her own social media, detailing our 40-year friendship and my consistent mental clarity. Most powerfully, she shared photos of me from just last week at our church fundraiser, clearly engaged and alert, a stark contrast to the outdated, unflattering photo Lauren had chosen. But the most effective response came from an unexpected ally. Carol, perhaps seeking redemption for her role in the scheme, posted a public apology. I need to set the record straight about my cousin Lauren's claims regarding her mother. Barbara Miller. Contrary to what Lauren has posted, Barbara does not have dementia. I was involved in Lauren and Matthew's plan to have Barbara declared incompetent so they could take her house. I deeply regret my actions and have provided a full statement to authorities. Barbara is of sound mind, and the true victims here are the elderly who are manipulated by family members for financial gain. The post exploded through our community, creating a firestorm of controversy. Lauren quickly deleted her original post, but the damage to her credibility was done. People began reaching out to me with messages of support and apology for having believed Lauren's claims. But the social media battle was far from over. That evening, anonymous accounts began posting vicious comments on my Facebook page. "You're a miserable old woman who turned her own daughter against her. No wonder she wanted to put you in a home. You worked as a maid your whole life, and for what? For your daughter to hate you. You must have been a terrible mother. No one will miss you when you die. Your own child can't stand you." Each message was calculated to strike at my deepest insecurities, to make me question my worth as a mother and a person. Though I knew logically that Matthew or Lauren was likely behind these anonymous attacks, the words still wounded me deeply. Phone calls came at all hours of the night, unknown numbers, silence when I answered, or whispered threats. "You'll regret what you've done. Old ladies have accidents all the time." Strange people began showing up at my door, supposed social workers concerned about reports of an elderly woman in danger. Aggressive salespeople insisting I needed security systems because a single old woman is very vulnerable. Even people claiming to be distant relatives who had come to check on my well-being. Michael advised me to document everything and to be cautious about opening my door to strangers. "This is a common intimidation tactic," he explained. "They're trying to make you feel unsafe in your own home, hoping you'll back down out of fear." The harassment intensified when Lauren and Matthew were forced to move out. As they loaded their belongings into a rented truck, neighbors gathered to watch the spectacle, unsure what to believe about the family drama unfolding before them. Lauren played her part perfectly, occasionally wiping away tears, speaking softly to concerned onlookers about how worried she was about leaving her confused mother alone. Matthew maintained stoic silence, though the glares he directed at my windows conveyed his fury. After they left, I stood in my empty house, finally free of their presence, yet somehow feeling more vulnerable than before. Their physical threat was gone, but the psychological warfare had only intensified. That night, as I prepared for bed, my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Do you think your locks will keep you safe? Do you think we can't get to you whenever we want? Sleep tight. Barbara." I called the police immediately. The officer who responded was kind but limited in what he could do. "Unfortunately, text messages like this fall into a gray area," he explained. "It's threatening in tone but doesn't contain a specific threat. The most we can do is document it as part of the ongoing harassment case." I thanked him, and after he left, double-checked every lock in the house. For the first time in 30 years, I pushed a heavy dresser in front of my bedroom door before going to bed. The next morning, I awoke to find my front lawn covered in trash food waste. Torn papers, broken glass, my mailbox had been smashed, and someone had spray-painted "crazy" across my garage door. As I stood on my porch, surveying the damage, Mrs. Rose approached cautiously. "Barbara," she said, her expression troubled, "I owe you an apology. I saw Matthew driving away from your house at 2 a.m. I think he's the one who did this." "You saw him?" I asked, hope rising that finally there would be a witness to their harassment. She nodded firmly. "Clear as day. My grandson's allergies were acting up, so I was up giving him medicine. Looked out the window and saw Matthew's car. I'd recognize that red sports car anywhere. Barbara, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you before." With Mrs. Rose's statement, the police took the vandalism more seriously. They increased patrols in my neighborhood and formally warned Matthew to stay away from my property. The harassment didn't stop completely, but it became less overt. The anonymous calls and messages continued, but the physical intimidation tapered off as Matthew and Lauren realized they were being watched. Throughout this ordeal, Sarah remained my steadfast supporter, often staying overnight to ensure I wasn't alone. My church community, initially divided over Lauren's claims, gradually united behind me as more evidence of her deception came to light. One evening, as Sarah and I sat on my porch drinking tea and watching the sunset, a simple pleasure that had been denied to me during Lauren and Matthew's residency, I received an unexpected email. It was from St. Francis Home, the facility where Lauren had planned to place me. "Dear Mrs. Miller," it read, "we are writing to formally apologize for our role in what we now understand was an unauthorized and inappropriate admission plan. Your daughter presented falsified medical documents and misrepresented her legal authority to make decisions on your behalf. We have implemented new verification procedures to prevent similar situations in the future. We would welcome the opportunity to meet with you and your attorney to discuss how we can make this right." I showed the email to Sarah, who squeezed my hand supportively. "This is good, Barbara. It's more evidence for your case, and it shows the facility is acknowledging wrongdoing. It's not just about building a case anymore," I admitted quietly. "I've been thinking a lot about other elderly people who might not have caught on to the scheme like I did. How many end up institutionalized against their will because family members want their assets?" Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "You know, this whole terrible experience could end up helping others if you're willing to share your story." Her words planted a seed in my mind, one that would eventually grow into something much larger than my individual fight for justice. 3 weeks after Lauren and Matthew moved out, I received a particularly vicious anonymous letter in my mailbox. Unlike the previous harassment, this one struck at my deepest vulnerabilities. "You're a failed mother. You raised a daughter who hates you so much she'd rather see you dead. Think about what you did wrong. Your own children abandoned you because you're insufferable. No one will miss you when you die. You worked as a servant your whole life. And for what? For your daughter to despise you. You were a fool who let herself be used." Each word was calculated to shatter my self-esteem and make me doubt the decisions I had made throughout my life. That night, completely alone in my house, I broke down. I sat on my kitchen floor, the same place where I had first heard the voice message that changed everything, and cried like I hadn't cried since my mother's death. The weight of everything crashed down on me: the betrayal, the public humiliation, the loss of my only child, the fear that had become my constant companion. What did I do wrong? I asked the empty kitchen through my tears. How could I have raised a daughter who hates me so much? In my moment of deepest despair, I considered giving up. Maybe it would be easier to drop all the charges, forgive Lauren and Matthew, and try to rebuild our relationship. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe they did love me in their own way, and I had misinterpreted their intentions. I reached for the phone, my finger hovering over Michael's contact, ready to tell him to stop all legal proceedings. But just as I was about to press call, I remembered something that completely changed my perspective. I got up from the floor and went to my bedroom, where I kept all my most precious memories in a small wooden chest. I searched until I found what I needed: a letter my mother had written to me shortly before she died, when Lauren was 8 years old. "My dearest Barbara," the letter began in my mother's elegant handwriting. "If you are reading this, it is because I am no longer with you. But I want you to know that I am very proud of the woman and mother you are. You raised Lauren with so much love and dedication that I am sure she will be a good woman who will honor you for life." I continued reading with tears in my eyes. "But if things ever get difficult, if someone tries to hurt you or take advantage of your good heart, remember that you are stronger than you think. Don't allow anyone, not even your own daughter, to trample on your dignity. True love never seeks to destroy, never seeks to steal, never seeks to humiliate." The last lines of the letter gave me the strength I needed. "Barbara, you deserve respect. You deserve genuine love. You deserve to live your final years in peace and dignity. If someone can't give you that, then they don't deserve to have you in their life, no matter how much blood you share with them." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, My mother was right. True love doesn't destroy. It doesn't steal. It doesn't plan the death of a loved one as a financial opportunity. The next morning, I woke with renewed determination. I called Michael and said, "I want to proceed with all the charges. I am not going to drop anything. I want this case to go all the way." "I'm glad to hear that, Mrs. Miller," he replied, "because I have some important news. Lauren and Matthew are trying to reach an out-of-court settlement. They want to avoid a public trial at all costs." "What kind of settlement?" I asked. "They are willing to return all the money they took from you, pay for damages, and commit to never contacting you again if you drop the criminal charges." I thought about that proposal carefully. On one hand, I would recover my money and be rid of their manipulations forever. On the other hand, they wouldn't face the full legal consequences of their actions. "I accept the settlement," I finally decided. "But with one additional condition. I want them to sign a full confession of everything they did, publicly admitting that I am mentally competent and that all their accusations about my mental health were false. And I want that confession to be published in the same places where they defamed me." "That's very shrewd, Mrs. Miller," Michael told me. "It will completely clear your reputation and prevent them from continuing the smear campaign." A week later, Lauren and Matthew signed the agreement. I recovered my $8,750 plus $15,000 more in damages. But more important than the money, I recovered my peace of mind and my dignity. The public confession was devastating for them, but liberating for me. We, Lauren and Matthew Wilson, admit that we falsely accused Barbara Miller of having mental problems. We admit that we planned to take her property and that we created fraudulent documents to declare her incompetent. Barbara Miller is in perfect mental condition, and we invented those stories to justify our actions. We deeply regret the pain and suffering we have caused. That day, exactly 1 month after hearing the audio that changed my life, I realized that I had achieved something that had seemed impossible. I had defeated those who tried to destroy me, and I had done it with intelligence, dignity, and by always adhering to the law. With the legal agreement signed and my home truly my own again, I faced a crucial decision what to do with the rest of my life. At 66, I was not ready to simply exist in the shadow of betrayal. I wanted to create something meaningful from this painful experience. My first action was to completely change my will. I summoned Michael to my house and dictated my new final wishes. "Michael, I want all my assets, including this house and all my savings, to be donated to the Golden Hope Foundation, which helps senior citizens who have been abandoned or exploited by their families." "Are you completely sure about this decision?" he asked. "It's a considerable estate, approximately $490,000, including the house, your savings, and the compensations you received." "Completely sure," I replied firmly. "I want that money to help people who truly need it, not ungrateful children who see their parents as a financial investment." I also stipulated that if Lauren tried to contest the will, she would automatically lose any right to receive even a penny. My decision wasn't made out of spite, but from a deep conviction that my resources should support those who might find themselves in situations similar to mine, but without the strength or means to fight back. My second decision was to move. I no longer wanted to live in the house where I had been betrayed, where I had heard my own daughter plan my destruction. The memories were too painful, the space too large for my needs, now that I knew I would never host family gatherings again. I want to sell this property and buy something smaller, more in line with my current needs. I told Michael. 3 weeks later, I found the perfect place, a beautiful apartment in a residential complex for active seniors. It had gardens, recreation areas, and a community of people my age who valued independence and dignity. The apartment cost me $85,000, and with the $400,000 I had left from the sale of my house, plus the legal compensations, I had more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Moving day was emotional but cathartic. As I packed up decades of memories, I carefully sorted what to keep, what to donate, and what to leave behind both physically and emotionally. Each item I placed in boxes represented a choice about what part of my past would accompany me into my future. My new apartment quickly became a sanctuary. I decorated it exactly as I pleased, without considering anyone else's preferences or criticisms. I hung my favorite paintings, arranged my books by color rather than author, something Lauren had always found irritating, and bought the comfortable but impractical white sofa I'd always wanted but had denied myself because of Lauren's warnings about stains. The residential complex offered activities I'd never had time for during my working years: painting classes, book clubs, dance lessons for seniors. I discovered at 66 that I had a natural talent for watercolors. My landscapes began to decorate the walls of my apartment, and I even sold several at the community art fair. "Mrs. Miller," the fair organizer told me, "your paintings convey a peace and wisdom that touches people's hearts." Those words meant more to me than any praise Lauren had ever given me. For the first time in decades, I was being valued for something I created purely for myself, not for what I sacrificed for others. I also joined the volunteer group at the Golden Hope Foundation, working 3 days a week helping other seniors who had been abandoned or mistreated by their families. My experience became a powerful tool to help others recognize the warning signs of elder exploitation and defend themselves. Margaret, Ms. Carmen, an 81-year-old woman who had come to the foundation after her children had evicted her from her house, told me, "You understand our pain because you lived it firsthand." At the foundation, I became a kind of unofficial counselor. People who arrived broken and hopeless found in my story an example that recovery was possible, that a dignified life could be rebuilt after the most profound family betrayal. Mrs. Miller, Mr. Robert, a 75-year-old man whose children had emptied his bank accounts, asked me, "How did you manage to forgive and move on?" "Mr. Robert," I had replied, "forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or allowing them to hurt us again. Forgiving means freeing our heart from the poison of resentment so we can live in peace. But living in peace also means moving away from those who hurt us, even if they share our blood." My work at the foundation gave me a purpose I never thought I would have at this age. We helped 47 seniors recover money stolen by their families. 23 managed to reverse fraudulent documents that declared them incompetent, and 15 found new safe homes after being evicted by their own children. But the most important thing I discovered was my own self-worth. For 66 years, I had measured my value by how much I could give to others, how much I could sacrifice, how much pain I could endure in silence. Now I understood that my value as a person did not depend on being useful to others, but on being true to myself and respecting my own boundaries. As for Lauren and Matthew, I occasionally received news of them through mutual acquaintances. They had to move to a smaller, more economical apartment. Matthew had definitely lost his opportunities for promotion and now worked at a lower-paying job. Lauren had to accept an additional part-time job to pay off their debts. But what saddened me most was hearing that their marriage was in crisis. When they no longer had my house as a backup plan, they started blaming each other for the failure of their scheme. Mrs. Rose told me they were constantly fighting over who was to blame for everything being discovered. This didn't give me vengeful satisfaction, but a deep sadness for the choices they had made. They had destroyed not only their relationship with me, but also their own relationship with each other. Greed had been a poison that contaminated everything it touched. My most satisfying revenge against Lauren and Matthew wasn't planned. It emerged naturally from the consequences of their own actions and my commitment to protecting others from similar schemes. During my investigation with Michael, we had discovered that Lauren and Matthew had been dishonest not just with me, but with multiple institutions. Their tax returns for the past 3 years had significantly underreported their income to avoid paying their fair share. "Mrs. Miller," Michael had told me with a knowing smile, "I have information that might interest the IRS." He showed me evidence that Matthew had been working unreported side jobs and that Lauren had been selling products online without declaring those earnings. These undeclared incomes explained how they maintained their lavish lifestyle despite their claimed financial difficulties. As a responsible citizen, I had told Michael, I believe it is my duty to report any tax evasion I am aware of. After all, we all must contribute fairly to our country's upkeep. A week later, the IRS initiated a full audit of Lauren and Matthew's finances. They discovered the couple owed $22,000 in back taxes, plus penalties and interest that brought the total debt to $35,000. Since they didn't have that money available, they had to sell their car, pawn Lauren's designer jewelry, and take out high-interest loans to avoid more serious consequences for tax evasion. My second form of justice came through professional channels. During our investigation, we had also discovered that Carol hadn't been the only public employee involved in the fraud. There was an entire network of corruption at the county clerk's office that facilitated these kinds of thefts against seniors. With Michael's help, we turned over all the information to the appropriate authorities. The investigation resulted in the dismissal of 6 public employees, including Carol, and the discovery of at least 12 similar cases to mine, where they had stolen properties from seniors using fake documents. When the scandal became public in the local newspapers, Lauren and Matthew became the perfect example of unnatural children who abused their elderly parents. Their names and photographs appeared on the front page with headlines like "Family Betrayal That Shocked the City" and "Children Plan to Steal 66-year-old Mother's Home." But my most intelligent form of justice was social. Lauren worked at a prestigious marketing firm where personal reputation was essential for professional growth. When her boss discovered the scandal through the newspapers, he called her into his office for an uncomfortable conversation. "We cannot have employees involved in family fraud scandals," he told her. "Our company has a reputation to protect." Although he didn't fire her immediately, he demoted her to a less important position and made it clear that she would have no opportunities for promotion in the near future. Matthew also faced consequences at his workplace. His supervisor, upon learning that he had participated in a plan to defraud his mother-in-law, told him, "If you're capable of stealing from your own family, how do we know you won't steal from us?" He lost all opportunities for advancement, trapped in a position with no future prospects. But what satisfied me most was seeing how their own friends and family rejected them. Matthew's sister refused to speak to him after finding out what they had planned to do to me. "How could you participate in something so cruel against an old woman who had only treated you with love?" she had screamed at him during a family confrontation witnessed by several neighbors. Lauren's friends gradually abandoned her. The mothers in her social circle didn't want to associate with someone who had so cruelly betrayed her own mother. "If she's capable of doing that to the woman who gave birth to her, what wouldn't she be capable of doing to us?" they commented among themselves. Even at the supermarket and pharmacy where they had been known for years, people would point and whisper behind their backs. They had become a public example of what not to do to elderly parents. Throughout this process, I never acted with hatred or a thirst for revenge. Every action I took was legal, ethical, and justified. I didn't lie about them, invent false accusations, threaten them, or cause them physical harm. I simply allowed the natural consequences of their own actions to unfold. 6 months after that fateful voice message, I ran into Lauren at the mall. She looked haggard, tired, and much older than her 35 years. When she saw me, she approached with tears in her eyes. "Mom," she said in a broken voice, "please forgive me. I understand you're angry, but we've already paid the price. We lost everything. Our credit is ruined. Matthew lost his promotion. I had to take a lower-paying job. Don't you think that's punishment enough?" I looked her directly in the eyes without hatred, but without weakness. "Lauren, I didn't punish you. The consequences of your actions punished you. You decided to plan my destruction. I just decided to defend myself. But we're family," she pleaded. "Blood is blood, Mom. You can't abandon your only daughter. Blood doesn't give you the right to mistreat, steal from, or plan someone's death," I replied calmly. "For 35 years, I was your unconditional mother. For 3 months, you were my calculating executioner. You can't ask me to forget that just because you're now facing the consequences. So you're not going to forgive me?" she asked, crying. "I already forgave you, Lauren," I told her honestly. "Forgiving you was necessary for my own peace of mind, but forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or allowing you to hurt me again. Forgiving doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. Forgiving doesn't mean giving you another chance to destroy my life." I left her crying in that mall and walked away toward my new apartment, where my new life awaited me, a life where I was no longer anyone's victim, where I no longer had to pretend that abuse was love, where I no longer had to sacrifice my dignity to maintain toxic relationships. For the first time in decades, I was completely free. 1 year after that encounter at the mall, my life had taken a path I never imagined possible. At 67, I woke up that spring morning in my beautiful apartment with the sun filtering through the white curtains I had chosen myself, without anyone telling me they were too expensive or unnecessary. I made my coffee in my small but perfect kitchen and sat on my balcony to contemplate the gardens of the residential complex. In the distance, I could see other residents doing their morning exercises, tending to plants, or simply enjoying the tranquility. We were all seniors who had decided to live our final years with dignity and independence. "Good morning, Barbara," greeted my neighbor, Olivia, a 72-year-old woman who had become my best friend. "Ready for our dance class today?" I smiled, remembering how I had started taking dance classes at 67, something I never thought I would do. "More than ready, Olivia. These old bones still have a lot to give." During this year, I had discovered a version of myself that had been dormant for decades. Without the constant pressure to please Lauren, without the stress of walking on eggshells in my own house, I had blossomed like a flower that finally received sunlight after years in the shade. 6 months ago, I had received a letter from Lauren. I hadn't opened it immediately, taking 3 days to decide if I wanted to read what she had to say. Finally, I opened it in Olivia's presence for emotional support. "Dear Mom," the letter began, "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I need you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did to you. I've been going to therapy, and now I understand that my actions were unforgivable." The letter continued, "The therapist helped me understand that my actions were not born of financial desperation, but of a selfish mindset I had developed over the years. I got so used to receiving your unconditional help that I stopped seeing you as a person with rights and feelings and started seeing you as a resource I could exploit. Now I understand that you deserved respect, genuine affection, and care in your golden years. Instead, I gave you manipulation, lies, and betrayal. I have lost the best mother in the world because of my own greed and stupidity." The letter ended with a phrase that made me cry. "I don't expect your forgiveness, Mom, because I know I don't deserve it. I just hope you are happy and that you find the peace you always deserved." That letter had taken me weeks to process emotionally. On one hand, I was glad to know Lauren finally understood the magnitude of what she had done. On the other hand, it was already too late to rebuild our relationship. Some wounds, even if they can heal, leave scars that are too deep to allow things to return to how they were before. I had responded with a brief but honest letter. "Lauren, I accept your apology and I'm glad to know you're seeking professional help. I forgive you because holding a grudge would harm me. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean I can trust you again. I wish you the best in your life. But my life is now at peace without you." On quiet nights in my new home, I often reflected on the lessons this experience had taught me. The most important was that true love never seeks to destroy or appropriate the loved one. True love respects, protects, and seeks the well-being of the other without expecting anything in return. I had also learned that setting boundaries is not cruelty but emotional survival. For decades, I had confused extreme sacrifice with maternal love, when in reality, I had been teaching Lauren that she could mistreat me without consequences. Sometimes, I had told the women in the Foundation support group, "The greatest inheritance we can leave our children is not money or property, but the example that all people, including their mothers, deserve respect and dignity." That spring morning, as I finished my coffee on the balcony, I received a call from Michael. "Mrs. Miller, I have some news that might interest you. I've just been contacted because 3 other cases similar to yours have come to light. The affected families want you to share your experience on how to deal with these situations." "Of course," I replied without hesitation. "If my story can help other people defend themselves, I am completely willing to share it." That afternoon, as I painted a mountain landscape on my easel, I reflected on the incredible journey I had been on for the past 18 months. I had started as a silent victim and had become an empowered survivor who now helped others find their own strength. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Olivia inviting me to dinner at the new restaurant downtown. "Barbara, let's go celebrate life," she said with her contagious enthusiasm. As I got ready to go out, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a completely different woman from the one I had been a year and a half ago. My eyes shone with a confidence I had never had before. My posture was upright and proud, and my smile was genuine and free of emotional burdens. "Barbara," I said to myself in the mirror, "at 67 years old, you finally learned that your life belongs only to you and that you deserve to live it with dignity, joy, and peace." That night, having dinner with my new chosen family instead of my toxic biological family, we toasted to new beginnings, to the wisdom that comes with age, and to the courage to defend what is right regardless of the consequences. And as I raised my glass of wine, I thought of all the women who at that moment were suffering from the mistreatment of their own families, believing they had no options, that they had to endure abuse for the sake of family love. If my story could reach just one of those women and give her the courage to defend herself, then everything I had gone through would have been worth it. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance we can receive is not money or property, but the courage to be true to ourselves and the knowledge that it is never too late to write a new chapter in our lives. It is never too late to choose dignity over convenience, truth over false peace, and self-love over destructive sacrifice. And it is never, ever too late to be free. What would you do if you were in Barbara's place? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Do you think forgiveness requires reconciliation? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.